Welcome to 3Q. In this series, we're looking at artificial intelligence and its impact on the venture capital industry. And for this episode, I'm talking to Peter Cowley, Investment Director of Martlet Capital. Peter's more famous as being a tech entrepreneur and also an angel investor. Hi, Peter, and thank you for appearing on the programme.
Hi there. How are you, David?
Very well, thank you. My first question is, do you think artificial intelligence is being used to support or even make investment decisions in the modern VC?
Yeah, first of all, one needs to define artificial intelligence, which I think is overused. It's definitely well up on the hype curve, the Gartner hype curve. Artificial intelligence in principle is machine learning or deep learning. So if you take AI, a term I don't like because I don't think there's much intelligence involved in artificial intelligence in comparison with us as human beings. You take AI, it requires data. And so where does that data come from? So split VC into the early stage, the angels, and the later stage. At the early stage, as you know, you've been in the business longer than I have, I suspect, you're investing in people. So how do you collect that data on those people? What data is there in there? So I'm not investing in a business. They must have a business plan, clearly, but I'm investing in human beings. You're not going to follow them through their lives. You can take a bit from LinkedIn, you can take a bit from their CV, you can take a bit from what they say. But how can there be enough data there for some AI engine to manipulate that and learn from it? So I don't think under any circumstances AI can be used to work out whether a human being is worth investing in. So let's move it a bit further later on. So VCs are investing in businesses. They're still run by people, you know, there's a big difference. Even CEOs of huge corporations are still important to the business. So people buy shares based on that CEO's behavior. But there's a lot more data there. There's a lot of data about historical sales, there's data about products, there's data about, you know, how well they're doing in the markets, etc. So in principle, one could take that data. But again, what are you going to where's the other data that you're going to teach the AI engine from? You know, if it's two businesses, say they're both making baked beans. I've been to the Heinz factory, quite close to you. I put some equipment in there years ago. So you've got two companies making baked beans. You've sort of got a little bit of data there. You've got market shares, you've got taste and everything. But that's not enough data to teach an AI engine to do something. So I just don't see how AI can have enough data to teach it to actually help make decisions. So either in the market or more specifically in the human beings.
We've seen VCs get quite excited about investments in AI, or what's been termed as artificial intelligence. Do you think that's a good strategy, or do you think it's more of a fad, you know, a fashion in the industry?
No, I think it's a bit hypey, as I said earlier on, but it's both a good fashion and it's not a fad. There's no doubt artificial intelligence, which started, I think, with in the UK, at least in Scotland, back in the 70s when I was studying computer science. It's moving on. It's moving on very rapidly at the moment, but it's not moving on in the situation we've just talked about in terms of investing in human beings. It's moving on where there's lots of data. So one of my investments, for instance, is a robot that picks strawberries, rather current problem at the moment. And this is learning from a data set which is a whole stack of strawberries and whether they should be picked or not, so they're being tagged. That's a great example of artificial intelligence, machine learning being used for a real world example. And that is happening more and more and more in all kinds of fields, whether it's checking whether it's going to be some dodgy customer for a bank or et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely on the rise, and there will be more and more investment in this field.
The other thing I thought about with artificial intelligence, I've seen examples of VCs using it to monitor their portfolios, especially in these troubled times, but more generally, the markets in which their constituent companies operate. What's your feelings about using AI to monitor a portfolio?
I'd really like to understand what you mean by you've seen VCs doing it, because of the same old problem. How can you, what are you monitoring? What's the VC monitoring that's comparing with something else that it's learned from? I can imagine an algorithm being in there. You've got to bear in mind, we've had algorithms. I've been a software programmer since the 70s. I know what an algorithm is. Yeah. AI is not an algorithm. It's something where the computer is working something out from a whole stack of data. And so where's that data coming from? Just monitoring a company. What are you comparing it with? How can you teach something to monitor companies? Particularly if we investors, you as well, I'm sure you get involved in disruptive companies, where they're disrupting technology, they're disrupting markets. There's no comparisons in many cases, or you're comparing it with a piece of paper or a spreadsheet or something. So no, I just don't understand at all how any AI could be used to monitor a company. Monitoring market's slightly different, and that is used. It's clearly used on the liquid markets, so on the stock markets, because there's loads of data there that we collected from all over the place. In the illiquid markets, in terms of valuation, that's not easy either, because there isn't transparent data about what companies are doing, either financially or with about the technology they're building or whatever. So I don't think it can be done specifically for companies and what they're doing internally, but I can see a level, but only very limited level, of what you can do in the sectors, because the transparency of information is so poor.
Peter, thank you very much. There's some very interesting insights there on the AI and the venture capital. It's a pleasure to talk with you today. Thank you very much for appearing on the programme.
Thanks, David.